going on, guys? We are back with another episode of MEKHI'S Money Making Plays. This week we got UFC Vegas 109, Roman Dolidze taking on Anthony Hernandez. We're going to start the video off with the lock of the week, my most confident picks, favorite underdogs, and then we're going to wrap the video up with the parlays. Make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe, and let's get into the lock of the week. So, looking back on last week, we hit with another parlay. Kevin Vallejos, Andre Puyaev, moneyline, plus 101 for the lock of the week parlay to hit again. And looking at this week's slate, the odds are disgusting. We got a lot of favorites upwards of minus 300, minus 250. We even got a minus 600 on this card. It's absolutely atrocious. So we going right back to the same recipe that worked for us last week. We got to do another parlay. Necessarily, we don't have to, but I definitely like what I concocted, what I stirred up in the lab for you guys. I think we got another high chance of success, and we dicing it up a little bit. We going with the method of victory on this parlay too. So I really like what I'm seeing. I definitely think this matchup is one of the matchups that we're throwing in for the lock of the week is definitely going to be one-sided, and I expect it to be everything such as. So let's not waste no more time. Let's get into the lock of the week parlay once again. Lock of the week parlay, Steve Erceg inside the distance, tying it up with Gene Matsumoto moneyline, plus 130. I really like this combination. Looking at Steve Erceg to, start it off, this dude was once, he was a round away from winning the world championship. Now he's getting matched up with Ode Osborne on short notice. They also don't have to cut to the 125 weight limit. They're fighting at 135, so that's another advantage for Steve Erceg. Yes, it kind of, helps Ode Osborne a little bit because he doesn't have to cut that weight and, risk getting knocked out because he was weight drained, but it also could be, a built-in excuse. But I do see Steve Erceg finishing this fight, whether it's a knockout or a submission. The reason why we're going with inside the distance is because Steve Erceg does have a sneaky ground game that I think a lot of people are sleeping on. If you look at the submission prop for Steve Erceg, it's actually plus money at 175. Ode Osborne on the other side, he has been submitted in the UFC 3 or 4 times, I believe now, and it's been a very large hole in his game. Steve Erceg is pretty nasty on the feet as well. I definitely think he could sting Ode Osborne up on the feet. I know Ode does have the reach advantage, and he is slightly quicker, but when I look at Steve Erceg, his strike style is way sharper than Ode Osborne. His head movement is pretty good. He's got really good footwork. Ode Osborne, yes, like I said, he has that reach advantage, but he also extends on his shots, really past the punch and leaves himself there to get countered, which is another reason why I think Steve Erceg is more than capable of knocking Ode Osborne out on the feet. When we look at Ode Osborne, let's not, get it confused. He is 13-8. He has been knocked out twice. He's been submitted 4 times. His last win was against Luis Garule, who was a debut guy coming off a Dana White Contender Series. Caught him with a perfect left hook, uppercut, and, finished the fight in the second round. I did pick Garule there, but Steve Erceg is not Luis Garule. Right before that, he lost a decision to Ronaldo Rodriguez. Then he got subbed in 2 fights back-to-back to Rafael Filho and Asu Amabayev. I believe Steve Erceg is better than every fighter that I just had a brain fart, that Ode Osborne has ever fought in his career. Like I said, Steve Erceg is a former title challenger, and yes, he is also on a 3-fight losing streak, but let's break down who he's losing to. He lost to Alexandre Pantoja, who's the champion and who has been pretty much running through the entire flyweight division. He lost to Brandon Moreno, former 2-time flyweight champion, and it was a really close fight. I had Steve Erceg having, winning majority of the exchanges, but ultimately he lost. It is what it is. And then he got a flash knockout to Kai Kara-France, who just fought for the title. So the dude lost to 2 champions and 1 title challenger. I'm not writing him off just because of that. Right before that, he was on a nasty run, made his UFC debut on short notice, taking on David Dvorak, and he looked, pretty much phenomenal in that fight. And he won. He won against the 10th ranked flyweight in the division at the time on his debut. Then he fought Alexandre Costa, looked really good in that fight, won it, and then he knocked out Matt Schnell to set up the title shot. Steve Erceg is still one of the top 10 guys in the flyweight division, and I don't see Ode Osborne being the one to, steal his ranking or even beat him at all. I don't think, I really think this is a setup for Steve Erceg to get his name back good in the graces of the UFC and the fans. I think a lot of people are sleeping on Steve Erceg because he's on a 3-fight losing streak. Not necessarily in this fight because he is a wide favorite. He's like minus 650 on the money line. But as far as Steve Erceg, the person, I do think a lot of people are writing him off, for another big fight. He was supposed to fight Alex Perez. Alex Perez ended up getting hurt, and then he was supposed to fight Hung Sung Park. Looking at Hung Sung Park was getting, touched up on the feet by Tatsuda Taira. I think Steve Erceg probably would have knocked out Hung Sung Park. Hung Sung Park gets finished by Tatsuda Taira. I believe Steve Erceg is capable of doing one or the other, a knockout or a submission on Ode Osborne, who I rate to be below both of the opponents that Steve Erceg was originally supposed to fight. So give me Steve Erceg inside the distance. I think this is the lock of all locks this week coming up. Then on the other hand, we got Gene Matsumoto, who's also a pretty wide favorite. He sits right now at minus 310. But I do believe Gene Matsumoto is the more overall well-rounded fighter in this matchup. I like Miles Johns. He does have some solid wrestling, some solid grappling. But when we look at the striking department, Gene Matsumoto also has a 2.5 reach advantage where I see he will be able to beat Miles Johns to the punch. Miles Johns likes to load up, throw a lot of hooks. Gene is pretty precise with his punches. I believe, a nasty straight shot down the middle, not necessarily sitting Miles Johns down, but it's definitely going to deter him from swinging wild, trying to clinch up. And, I see Miles Johns trying to shoot a lot of takedowns, but we've seen Gene Matsumoto be able to get back to his feet and also find a finish when guys are shooting, panic wrestling against him. We've seen it in the Dan Argueta fight where he got the ghillie in the second round. Gene Matsumoto is more than capable of finishing Miles Johns. I just didn't want to go ahead and necessarily put it as a lock, but we got something stored for Gene Matsumoto later down the line. But like I said, Gene Matsumoto, I do believe, is capable of beating Miles Johns, whether it be by decision, whether it be by a finish. I think he has this fight in the bag. He's coming off the split decision loss to Rob Font, but it was a really good, really entertaining, really close fight. And I don't see Miles Johns, coming back. Also coming off of a loss against Felipe Lima, who's another pretty accurate, pretty slick styled bantamweight in this division. I rate, Felipe and Gene Matsumoto pretty closely. Felipe just coming off that loss to Peyton Talbot, but I do believe Felipe Lima and Gene Matsumoto are pretty similar in the skill set, and I do believe he'll be able to, beat Miles Johns as well. So give me Gene Matsumoto, Steve Erceg inside the distance to lock it up for another parlay. Plus 130. I'm rolling with it. I think you guys are going to like it. I love it. And we going again. We going hard in the paint again. Back-to-back weeks. Let's get another parlay rolling. Now, moving on to the most confident picks. Like I said, the odds all over this card are disgusting. But I got a couple. I got 3 that I'm going to put on the screen for you right now. We got Elijah Smith sitting at minus 700. Anthony Hernandez sitting at minus 330. And Jocelyn Edwards minus 310. Looking at Elijah Smith, I do believe he gets a knockout in the first round. When we look at Toshiyama Kazama, he's really reckless. Like I said in the breakdown, he walks forward, throws a lot of chaos at you. He's trying to get, take you down at all means necessary. But one thing that he leaves out there is his chin. And Elijah Smith is a very, not necessarily cautious, but he's a very present and composed boxer. His wrestling is also more than capable as well, but I definitely see him being able to sting Kazama up on the feet. And I do think, that chin has failed Kazama many times before. I definitely think it's going to fail him again. Under a round and a half for the Smith fight is sitting at, let me pull it up for you right now. Under 1.5 is minus 140. So I definitely think Elijah Smith is more than capable of finding a first round finish. Maybe even, a second round isn't crazy either, but I definitely see how Kazama likes to fight. It's all gas, no brakes, first round, and I'm coming for you. And I think Elijah Smith has a right cross ready and loaded for Kazama. So looking forward to Elijah Smith getting a highlight reel knockout on this card. Next up, we got Anthony Hernandez. I'm getting ahead of myself. I do believe Anthony Hernandez is going to beat Roman Dolidze. I think it's going to be by submission or a late fight submission or a decision. I think he's more versatile in the grappling. I know Roman Dolidze is a solid grappler himself, but I feel as though he's going to rely on strength early to get Hernandez down, who's pretty slick. He can, the way he was able to grapple with Brendan Allen and reverse positions, transition to, full mount, back mount, side control, things of that nature. I think he's more than capable of doing the same thing to Roman Dolidze. And then what happens when Roman Dolidze gasses out after shooting, 5-6 takedowns, and he's unable to control Anthony Hernandez? Maybe he gets him down in the first round and, tallies up a little bit of control time. But I see Anthony Hernandez, he's got a really solid active guard throwing, he could throw some elbows up from bottom. He can find a way to escape that position and get you on your back. Anthony Hernandez is capable of, I think he's more than capable of tiring out Roman Dolidze. His cardio is phenomenal. I think he's the better striker in this matchup. And like I said, the grappling, I feel as though it speaks for itself. Anthony Hernandez is live to win this fight however he chooses. Maybe he gets Roman Dolidze super tired late in the fight. I could definitely see him sneaking up under that neck and getting a rear naked submission. Maybe he gets a TKO. We never know. But I do believe Anthony Hernandez is winning this fight. Then we're moving on to Jocelyn Edwards, who is another pretty big favorite. She sits at -310. I do believe she beats Priscilla Cachoeira, Zombie Girl. Zombie Girl likes to walk forward. She likes to be in brawls. But Jocelyn Edwards is pretty accurate. She's pretty clean. She knows how to pick her shots. Her wrestling is improving. Her jiu-jitsu is improving. And I think she's just going to be way too much for Priscilla Cachoeira in this fight. So give me Jocelyn Edwards, -310 to win this fight. Does it go inside the distance? Or does she win it inside the distance? She's capable. I can definitely see her, taking Cachoeira down, maybe getting like a TKO. I could definitely see her in full mount, landing some heavy shots. She's coming off of that knockout over Chelsea Chandler, which was pretty impressive on that Kansas City card because she didn't, get a stand and stop it. She put her out. So Jocelyn Edwards is more than capable of knocking these females out, and Zombie Girl could be another one of her victims. It's not like, we haven't seen Cachoeira rocked before. Jasmine Jasovicius did put her out with a choke. And then she also got armbarred by Miranda Maverick not too long ago. So I'm looking forward to seeing what Jocelyn Edwards' approach is going to be. Does she wrestle or does she strike? Either way, Jocelyn Edwards is way too clean for her. So give me Jocelyn Edwards to win this fight as well. Now, I got one more for you. I didn't put them up on the screen yet, but we're going to do it now. I said, why not? In the middle of the recording. We're going with CLD to win, and I do believe he's live for a knockout. Eric Anders, yes, he's been around for a while. He doesn't necessarily have a knockout loss on his record. He has a retirement to Thiago Santos, where he quit late in the fight. But Eric Anders, his last two fights, he beat Chris Weidman by knockout, and then he beat Jamie Pickett. But he also got dropped in both of those fights. Jamie Pickett and Chris Weidman are nowhere near the striker that Christian Leroy Duncan is. So I do believe with Eric Anders being 38 here, getting knocked out, or not knocked out, but knocked down in two of those fights against much lower caliber strikers, I do think CLD is live to find that chin of Eric Anders and sit him down. Like I said in the breakdown, it really depends on what version of CLD we get. Do we get the patient, composed striker that we saw against Puyaev? I don't think so. Puyaev is way more dangerous than Eric Anders at this point, and I do believe CLD will be more willing to throw himself into the fire. So I do see CLD finding a knockout finish in this one, and he's also a heavy favorite. He's sitting at, pulling it up now, -460. So Like I said, the lines on this card are absolutely atrocious, but I had to throw COD in there. I do think he's live for a knockout, and the knockout line sits at. Let's take a look. You're gonna love it. COD by knockout plus 175. So I mean, there's some value there. So yeah, I like COD to find a knockout in this one over Eric Anders, and it might be time for your boy to hang it up if he does get put out here. Now let's move on to the favorite underdogs. I got two of them. One I'm super high on. The other, I think it is a 50-50 fight, but I'm going to bring him up for you. We're going with Gilbert Urbina and Andre Philly. I'm going to start with Gilbert Urbina because he is the one that I definitely believe can beat his opponent in this fight, and his opponent is Uros Medic. Medic is a pretty sound kickboxer, but he likes to strike from range. One thing he's not going to have in this fight is range, because Gilbert Urbina he's a former middleweight. He's larger. He has longer arms, and I think his grappling pressure is just going to be too much for Medic. I don't see Medic being able to sting him up from the outside for 3 rounds. From Gilbert, I believe his cardio is going to look much better. He has taken a year off because he was knocked out a year and a half ago by Charles Radke, but Radke is a much more dangerous striker than Uros Medic. And Medic is also coming off of a knockout as well. It was only 6 months ago to Punahele Soriano. And that was a pretty nasty knockout. That was Soriano's debut at 170, I believe, as well. But looking at Gilbert, man, I feel as though if you look through his performances, he has flashes of good, man. He's just been, if you look at, the matchups he's gotten, 2018, I know we're going back a while, but he fought Sean Brady, lost by decision. He was in the Ultimate Fighter for a little bit. I believe he won a fight. I think he won 2 fights. I can't remember the season off the top of my head. But then he ended up fighting Brian Battle and lost by submission. But there was moments in that fight where he had Brian Battle's back, took him down, and, ultimately just ended up getting submitted. But Brian Battle, look at Brian Battle now. He's possibly on the verge of fighting. Well, he's fighting Nursultan Ruzaboyev, but I feel as though if he gets past Ruzaboyev, which is a tall task, we can find Brian Battle in the rankings at welterweight. So it's not a bad loss to have on your record. Then he got the knockout on Orion Costco. Not necessarily, the top UFC level, but it's still a win and a finish on his record 2 years ago. And then ultimately, he got knocked out by Charles Radke. But Radke is still pretty dangerous. His boxing combinations are pretty clean, and the dude has power. Looking at Medic, he's coming off the loss to Soriano. He got a win over Tim Means, who has been in the UFC for ages. It was a knockout win about a year ago, but I don't really rate that highly. And then he lost to Mitabek Orlabai by a submission neck crank. Mitabek Orlabai's pressure and wrestling was one thing that was definitely, on display in that fight, which is similar to what Gilbert Urbina I can see doing in this one. And then he got a knockout over Matthew Semelsberger, who Charles Radke also finished. So I think if Medic was to fight Charles Radke, I see Charles Radke knocking Uros Medic out. I don't think Uros Medic would do what Mike Malott did to Charles Radke. His speed isn't the same as Mike Malott's. Gilbert Urbina, he's still young. He's barely 30. I know Uros Medic is only 32. Not saying he's old or anything, but Gilbert Urbina, I feel as though we haven't seen the best of him yet. And I do believe this is a really good, prove yourself, bounce back fight for him. Both these guys coming off a knockout, so maybe, Medic is a little tender in the striking, and that gives opportunity for Urbina to close the distance, and we're also in the smaller cage. So I like Urbina's chances. I definitely think he can submit Uros Medic, and I think he's a super live underdog. I would definitely, put some money on him. So give me Gilbert Urbina to win this fight. Now moving on to Andre Philly. Like I said, I do believe this is a 50-50 fight. The reason why I say that is because Philly does make mistakes in the grappling. We saw that with Melquizio Costa, where he basically gave his neck to Melky and got submitted, which I predicted precisely. Like literally, I said, Philly's going to shoot for a takedown, and he's going to give his neck up and Costa's going to submit him. And what do you know? What happened? The exact same thing. But C-Rod, every time he fights a vet, he loses, man. So it's really give and take here. What's going to give? What are we taking? I do believe Philly is the better striker. I don't rate C-Rod striking high at all. But it all depends on, can Philly stay on his bicycle for 3 rounds and defend the takedowns? Can he stay, clean from the striking? Can he win the exchanges? Can he force C-Rod, you know, into that dogfight that that he's gonna need it to be? So it's really a 50-50 fight, but Philly sitting at plus 200. It was screaming my name, but I was like, nah, man, there's a red flag on the grappling, so I wasn't gonna put him as a confident pick or lock at all. But I do like Philly possibly winning like a split decision here. So give me Andre Philly plus 200, plus 190, some books. I do think he's capable of winning, but like I said, he's going to have to be on his P's and Q's and not make the same mistake that he made in his last fight. So yeah. Now let's move on to the big money plays. We got low volume this week. I'm gonna be honest with you, because this card to me is a pooper. It's a stinker. It's a bomb. I don't really like this card too much. On paper, I'll probably give it like a 4.5 if I'm being kind. Honestly, this card is not good at all. There's a couple fighters that I'm interested to see, what's next in their career. Like I do like Jocelyn Edwards. I am not necessarily a fan of her, but I do like watching her fight. That's somebody that I like to watch. I do like Anthony Hernandez. I do think he has top 5 potential, but ultimately I don't really like this card. So low volume, but got some upside. So let's break it down. Under 1.5, Smith versus Kazama. Like I told you, I think Smith gets a knockout there. Jocelyn Edwards money line, and then we're going Gabriela Fernandez inside the distance plus 328. Fernandez, I think, is going to sting Stolyarenko up on the feet, and that's why I got her inside the distance. I could definitely see a club and sub similar to what she did to Kong Wang, or maybe she just knocks her out. So like that play there, decent value there. Then there was also another fight added. I forgot to mention this at the top of the video, but we got Cody Brundage taking on Eric McConico. I'm picking Cody Brundage, as you could obviously see in the parlays. I do think Brundage could take McConico down. I don't see a very valid striking discrepancy or advantage from McConico. He got stung up by Ruzaboyev, which I called. Perfect left hand to sit him down, knockout. But McConico striking, I still think he's still finding himself, but I feel as though Brundage, who has been pretty much battle tested, yes, he's been finished, a few times, but his last loss got overturned, so it's a no contest. He's not coming off of a knockout. And watching it live, I was at the event, the UFC Atlanta event, had a lot of finishes on that card. I was watching the fight, from my seat, and I did think it was a illegal strike, and it turned out to be just so. So I do think Brundage, can wrestle McConico up, maybe make it a dirty brawl. We saw him being able to do that with I'm not good at names, but I'm good at remembering fights. But Brundage versus the Cuban Missile Crisis, Julian Marquez. Yeah, there we go. Where it got ugly for him for a second, but he came back and found the finish. I do see Brundage making it a dog fight, and we'll probably see McConico spend a lot of time on his back. So give me Brundage money line in that fight as well. I think he sits around like minus 140. But yeah, Brundage money line, Matsumoto inside the distance. Like I said, Matsumoto is capable of probably knocking Miles Johns out, or he can find a submission with all the takedown attempts that I will probably see from him. Plus 546 on that. And then we're going with Christian Leroy Duncan knockout and Gilbert Urbina money line plus 1078. That's really good money right there. Think that play is definitely, got some legs on it. So give me the big bang right there. The plus 1000 on to wrap up the parlays. So that is what I got this week for MEKHI'S Money Making Plays. Let me know what you guys think of the lock. Let me know if, you got another most confident pick that I need to throw in there. I think I got a solid 4. If you got another underdog that you think is live to win, let me know in the comments. If you don't like the parlays, you want some more value. Hey, look, man. You give me some money, I'll put some more parlays in there. That's all I'm gonna say. But yeah, if you don't got nothing else to say, drop a W in the chat. I appreciate you all for tuning in, and I'll see you for the weigh-in recaps. I'm back full time. I'm back. So we good. Thank you guys for tuning in. I'll catch you later. Peace out.